Hey guys, you're not going to believe this story. Seriously, this is the kind of thing that makes you question reality itself. Picture this. It's 3:17 in the morning. I'm dead asleep, dreaming about nothing important. When suddenly, beep, beep, beep. My alarm goes off like a freaking tornado siren. Tires screeching outside, flashing blue and red lights bouncing off my bedroom walls. I thought the apocalypse had hit my neighborhood. Heart pounding, I stumble to the window. And what I see almost makes me drop right there. A full-blown SWAT team is swarming the street. Guys in tactical gear, barking orders through radios, moving like it's some high-stakes Hollywood raid. But that's not even the craziest part. My Jeep, my pride and joy, is gone. Just vanished. And in its place, a bright orange traffic cone with a sticky note plastered on it that reads, "Code violation, HOA confiscated." I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or just laugh at the sheer stupidity of it all. See, I'd locked my Jeep up tight, parked it right in front of my property like the local police task force instructed me to. That thing was basically a surveillance vehicle for a months-long sting operation, packed with high-tech gadgets to monitor some drug ring that had moved into our supposedly peaceful neighborhood. And then it hit me. I'd have to explain to federal agents that my Jeep was stolen by the freaking HOA president. Welcome to Willow Creek Estates, a picturesque little suburb where life's supposed to be easygoing and quiet. I moved here hoping to finally settle down after years of military service and bouncing from place to place. Just wanted a quiet street, a backyard for my dog, and a garage big enough to rebuild motorcycles. And at first, it was perfect. Neighbors waving, kids playing on the cul-de-sac, barbecue smoke drifting through the air. But peace, as I'd soon find out, has one mortal enemy. Linda Farthington, the HOA president. Around here, everyone calls her Karen Supreme, and not without reason. If your grass is half an inch too tall, she'll slap a fine on your door. Halloween lights still up on November 1st? Prepare for a written warning. But what really drove her insane was my Jeep. Rugged, military black, blackout plating, reinforced bumpers. The first time she laid eyes on it, her lips pursed so hard I thought they'd disappear. "That doesn't belong in this neighborhood," she sneered, like the thing just insulted her mother. And that's where this whole nightmare began. The problem started when Karen saw my Jeep as some kind of personal insult to her pristine suburban kingdom. It wasn't just a vehicle to her. It was an eyesore, an abomination, something that didn't fit her perfectly manicured fantasy of what the neighborhood should look like. It didn't matter how many times I explained that the Jeep was part of my consulting work with local law enforcement, or that it was legally parked on my own property. To her, it was an off-road monstrosity, something that shouldn't exist in her little slice of suburban heaven. And she became obsessed. At first, it was just passive-aggressive letters shoved under my door. Stuff like, "Unauthorized vehicle modifications detected," "Excessive tactical aesthetics," and my personal favorite, "Parking intimidation." Who knew a parked Jeep could commit psychological warfare? But Karen didn't stop there. Oh no. She reported my Jeep to the HOA 5 separate times, each complaint escalating to abandoned vehicle status. Every time I explained that it wasn't abandoned, that it was legally parked, and that I had authorization from law enforcement. But did she listen? Of course not. What Karen didn't know, because she was too busy memorizing HOA bylaws, was that the Jeep was part of a federal surveillance operation. A task force had approached me a few months back, asking to use my Jeep as a fixed surveillance node. They wanted to catch a drug ring that had been creeping into the neighborhood. My Jeep was loaded with covert surveillance gear, remote cameras, GPS trackers, and a digital recording unit. And the best part, the reason they picked my Jeep was because it blended in. Rugged, intimidating, but perfectly normal for a guy with a military background. No one would suspect it was essentially a spy truck. But Karen just couldn't stand it. The final straw must have been the security lock I put on the front wheel to make it look even more secure, and to make it obvious that it wasn't just some junked vehicle rusting on the curb. I guess that lock triggered something primal in her. like a red flag to a bull. One afternoon, while I was out running errands, Karen decided to take matters into her own hands. Rick, my neighbor 2 doors down, caught the whole thing on his ring cam. There's Karen strutting up to my Jeep with a pair of bolt cutters in hand, like she's about to break into Fort Knox. She snaps the lock with a loud clang, smirks right into the camera, and mutters, "One less eyesore to worry about." Then she calls in some shady private tow service, no official markings, probably cash only, and they haul my Jeep away like it's a bag of trash. Rick's camera caught the whole thing, and he even heard her bragging about it later on the neighborhood Facebook group. Sometimes you just have to take matters into your own hands to keep the streets clean. When I got back and saw the Jeep was gone, my stomach dropped. At first I thought it had been stolen, until I saw that neon orange cone sitting in its place with a sticky note practically screaming, "Code violation, HOA confiscated." I couldn't believe it. My mind was racing. Did Karen seriously just tow a federal surveillance vehicle? It hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was federal obstruction, and I knew I had to call the task force right away. I grabbed my phone with shaky hands and called Officer Melendez, the guy from the task force who'd set up the whole operation. He picked up on the first ring. "Melendez, it's me. The Jeep's gone." There was a beat of silence. Then his voice dropped, low and deadly serious. "Oh, what do you mean, gone?" "The HOA towed it. Some crazy lady, Karen, she cut the lock and had it hauled off while I was out." "You're kidding," Melendez muttered, and I could practically hear his brain going into overdrive. "Stay put. We're on our way." Less than 30 minutes later, Melendez and 3 other officers pulled up in unmarked SUVs. He didn't even knock, just barged right in with a face like thunder. I showed him the video from Rick's camera, the whole thing. Karen snipping the lock like she was breaking into a bank vault, calling the tow truck, and laughing as it dragged my Jeep away. Melendez just stared at the screen, his jaw clenched tight. She cut the lock on a federally secured vehicle and towed it to an undisclosed location. "Yeah, pretty much." He sucked in a deep breath, trying not to lose his cool. "That's tampering with federal surveillance equipment, obstruction of justice at minimum." They immediately issued an emergency retrieval order. But the problem was, we had no idea where Karen had stashed the Jeep. The usual tow yards had nothing on record, which meant she'd taken it somewhere private, off the books, and probably illegal. The team spread out, combing through every potential location. But it wasn't until the next morning that Melendez texted me. "We found the Jeep. You're going to want to see this." He picked me up in his SUV, stone-faced and silent the whole ride. We ended up on a narrow dirt road behind the HOA maintenance shed, a rusty chained-up gate blocking the entrance. Melendez hopped out and gave the gate a good shove. The lock just swung open like it had been forgotten. Inside was a mess, a makeshift impound lot stuffed with cones, tarps, and random vehicles, including my Jeep, filthy, scratched up, and looking like it had been dragged through a mud pit. The driver's side mirror was cracked, and the surveillance equipment gutted. The casing that held the encrypted drive was pried open. Empty. Melendez kicked at a cone, shaking his head in disbelief. "This isn't a tow lot. This is a private HOA graveyard. She's running her own impound operation out of a utility shed." Before I could even process that, we heard the unmistakable sound of heels clicking on gravel. I turned just in time to see Karen strutting up, clipboard in hand, like she was hosting a garden party. "Oh, good, you found it," she chirped, smiling like she'd just reunited me with a lost puppy. "I was about to notify you." Melendez cut her off, his voice like ice. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle." Karen blinked, genuinely confused. "Excuse me? I'm the HOA president. I have full authority to remove any unregistered vehicles." "That vehicle is federal property involved in an active surveillance operation," Melendez snapped, taking a step toward her. "You just obstructed a federal investigation. You understand how serious that is?" Her face went pale, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of fear. But in typical Karen fashion, She quickly snapped back to her smug self. Well, it was abandoned. It looked like trash. I thought I was doing everyone a favor. Melendez just nodded to one of his guys. Take her in. As they cuffed her and led her to the squad car, Karen kept yelling about rights and community standards. But nobody was listening. The nightmare was finally over. And just like that, Karen's reign of terror was over. The cops took her down to the station, and the task force started piecing together just how much damage she'd done. Turns out she wasn't just towing my Jeep. She'd been running her own little private impound business using HOA funds. Yeah, talk about misusing authority. Oh, and it didn't end there. After the investigation wrapped up, they found out she'd been filing fake expense reports for years, paying for private towing, and God knows what else with HOA money. So not only was she looking at federal obstruction charges, but now embezzlement too. And guess what? The HOA itself dissolved. No more nitpicky rules, no more fines for Halloween lights staying up an extra day. People actually celebrated in the streets. Rick even set off some leftover 4th of July fireworks. It was beautiful. But the best part? They gave me the old HOA impound lot as a community space, and we turned it into a mini repair bay. Veterans, gearheads, and neighborhood kids all hang out there now. We even put up a sign that says "Reserved for Tactical Eyesore." So what's the moral here? Sometimes all it takes is one bold move from a power-hungry Karen to bring down her whole little empire. If you're gonna mess with someone's Jeep, maybe don't pick the one running a federal surveillance op. Thanks for sticking around to hear this wild ride of a story. Let me know in the comments what you would have done if you caught Karen cutting that lock. Would you have flipped out or just laughed at the insanity? And hey, if you enjoyed this crazy tale, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this one. Hit that bell so you never miss an update, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe out there.